6 years married. Sometimes I still can't believe it's been that long, and other times it feels like decades have passed in those 6 years. In the beginning, when things started feeling off, he had explanations that made sense. Things would get better after the promotion, he said. Once he wasn't so stressed about climbing the ladder, once he had more security at work, he'd have more energy for us, more presence, more time. I believed him because it sounded reasonable, because work stress is real, because I wanted to believe that this was temporary. Then he got the promotion and nothing changed. But he had another explanation ready. Things would improve after we moved, he said. The commute was killing him. The small apartment was making him tense. Once we had more space and less travel time, he'd be different. More available, more present. I told myself that made sense too. Our apartment was cramped. The commute was exhausting. Surely that was affecting him. So we moved. Got a bigger place closer to his office. I handled most of the packing, the coordinating, the setting up of the new place. After the move, he said it would get better once the busy season ended. Every industry has its intense periods, its crunch times when everything else has to take a back seat. I understood that. I'd always understood. I kept believing because the man I married, the one who used to notice when I was quiet, who used to ask what I was thinking, who used to make plans that included me, that man was in there somewhere. I just needed to wait a little longer. I told myself patience was love, that this is what commitment looked like, that relationships require understanding and support through difficult times. Every relationship book I'd ever encountered talked about patience, about being supportive, about not demanding too much during stressful periods. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought waiting was the mature choice, the loving choice, the choice that proved I was committed and understanding and not one of those demanding partners who needed constant attention. So I waited for the promotion to change things, then for the move to change things, then for the busy season to end. I kept waiting for the next milestone that would finally bring back the man I married. I became an expert at adjusting my life around his. It happened so gradually I didn't even realize I was doing it until adjustment became my default mode of existing. He'd come home late without calling, without any warning that he wouldn't be home at the usual time. The first few times, I'd have dinner ready and waiting, getting cold on the table. Then I started keeping it warm in the oven. Eventually, I just stopped making dinner at a set time and would wait to hear from him, eating at 8, 9, sometimes 10 o'clock at night because I didn't know when he'd be home. Weekend plans became negotiable. I'd suggest going to the farmer's market Saturday morning, trying that new brunch place, maybe taking a drive somewhere. He'd agree, seem interested, and I'd look forward to it all week. Then Saturday would come, and he'd get a text from his coworkers about work drinks, or his friends would invite him to watch a game, and our plans would dissolve. He'd ask if I minded, but it wasn't really a question, it was a notification. I'd say it was fine, we could do it next weekend. Next weekend, the same thing would happen. During conversations, the few we actually had, he'd be scrolling through his phone. I'd be telling him about something that happened at work, something I was worried about, something I was excited about, and his eyes would be on the screen. Sometimes he'd make listening noises, little hum sounds that meant he'd heard my voice, but not my words. I started adjusting how much I shared, keeping things shorter, less detailed, less personal. What was the point of sharing if he wasn't really there to receive it? The first year this started happening, I'd get upset. I'd tell him it hurt when he came home late without calling, when he canceled our plans, when he wasn't present during conversations. He'd apologize, say he didn't realize, promise to do better. The second year, I stopped getting upset and would mention it calmly, rationally, without emotion. Hey, could you let me know if you're going to be late? I was looking forward to our plans. His responses got briefer. Sorry, forgot. Something came up. By the 5th year, I'd stopped mentioning it at all. What changed after I mentioned it? Nothing. He'd acknowledge it and then do the same thing again the following week. Bringing it up only made me feel like I was nagging, like I was the problem for having expectations. So I just absorbed it, adjusted to it, built my life around the understanding that he wouldn't call when he'd be late, that plans were tentative, that his attention was a limited resource I couldn't count on receiving. I'd watch him spend hours researching fantasy football. He'd be completely absorbed, looking up player stats, reading articles, analyzing matchups, debating with his friends online about draft picks. He knew every player's injury history, every team's offensive strategy, every statistic that mattered. But he couldn't remember what I did for work. When people would ask him at parties or gatherings, he'd give a vague answer, something generic that was sort of in the vicinity of my actual job but not quite right. I'd correct him quietly and he'd shrug it off. I'd see him laugh at memes on his phone, genuinely laugh, that full laugh I used to hear more often. He'd be scrolling and something would make him crack up, completely entertained by whatever he was looking at. When I tried to share something funny, something I thought he'd enjoy, I'd get a half smile at best. "That's cool," he'd say in that tone that meant he was being polite but wasn't actually amused. Then he'd go back to his phone and I'd hear him laugh at something else 30 seconds later. I started planning my entire life around his availability, his moods, his needs. Before making any decision, I'd calculate how it might affect him, how it might fit into his schedule, whether he'd be okay with it. Not because he asked me to, he never explicitly demanded this, but because it became automatic. I'd think about taking a weekend class and immediately wonder if that would conflict with his plans. I'd consider meeting a friend for dinner and first check if he might need me home. My life became an exercise in anticipation and accommodation. My friends stopped inviting me places. Not because they stopped caring, but because I always gave the same answer, "Let me check with him first." And then I'd cancel anyway. Even if he said I should go, something would come up, he'd need me to pick something up, or he'd decided we were doing something that day, or he'd forgotten he'd agreed and made other plans. Eventually, my friend Sarah stopped asking. "Just let me know when you're free," she'd say, and I could hear the resignation in her voice. The unspoken understanding that I was no longer someone she could make plans with. Somewhere along the way, I started feeling like a supporting character in my own life. Like I existed in the margins of his world, present but not central, available but not necessary. I'd think about bringing this up, about trying once more to explain how invisible I felt, but what would I even say? That he was present but not present? That he was there but not really there? It sounded vague even in my own head, like something I couldn't quite articulate clearly enough to make him understand. I caught myself making excuses for him to other people. When my mom would ask why he couldn't come to family dinner, I'd explain how busy he was, how demanding his job was, how exhausted he must be. When my sister would point out that he never seemed to prioritize time with me, I'd defend him. "You don't understand the pressure he's under," I'd say. "He's doing his best." But at night, alone in bed while he scrolled through his phone beside me, I'd think, am I doing his best? Or am I doing all the work so he doesn't have to do any? There were moments I'd almost let myself feel angry. I'd be adjusting dinner time again, or canceling plans again, or sitting in silence again while he was absorbed in his phone, and I'd feel this heat rising in my chest. But then I'd push it down. Anger felt dangerous, like it might lead somewhere I wasn't ready to go. So I'd transform it into understanding instead. He's stressed. He's tired. He's dealing with a lot. I'd gaslight myself into patience, convince myself that my expectations were the problem, not his behavior. I started noticing I'd go entire days barely speaking. Not because we'd fought, fighting would have required him to be engaged enough to disagree. Just because there was nothing left to say that felt worth saying. The conversations we did have were logistical, transactional. "Did you pay the electric bill?" What time will you be home? We need groceries. We'd become roommates who occasionally shared a bed, coordinating the mechanics of a shared household, but not actually sharing our lives. One evening, I was sitting on the couch, and it just hit me. I'd been saying it'll get better for 6 years. 6 entire years of waiting for the promotion to change things, the move to change things, the busy season to end. 6 years of telling myself that patience was love, that waiting was commitment, that this was what marriage looked like when you really cared. 6 years of watching him choose everything else first: work, friends, fantasy football, scrolling through his phone, and choosing me only when nothing better was available. And the thing that scared me most wasn't that I was angry about it. It was that I wasn't even sad anymore when he disappointed me. I just expected it. He'd cancel plans, and I'd think, of course he did. He'd come home late without calling, and I'd think, obviously. He'd scroll through his phone while I was talking, and I'd just stop talking, not even bothered enough to feel hurt anymore. Disappointment had become my baseline, my normal, the thing I anticipated and prepared for automatically. That's when I understood what I'd been doing. I'd normalized my own abandonment, turned emotional neglect into a relationship trait I had to accept, like someone's sense of humor or taste in music. I'd trained myself to need less, expect less, ask for less, until I'd become so small and so quiet that I barely existed in my own marriage. And I'd called that patience. I'd called it understanding. I'd called it love. But it wasn't love to disappear into someone else's life. It wasn't patience to wait 6 years for someone to notice you were drowning. It wasn't commitment to keep choosing someone who never chose you back. I had confused endurance with devotion, survival with partnership. I'd stayed and stayed and stayed, thinking that staying was the hard work relationships require, not understanding that I was the only one working at all. He'd probably be surprised when I told him. He'd say he didn't realize things were that bad, that I should have said something, that he would have changed if he'd known. But I had said something in year 1, year 2, year 3. I'd said it calmly, and I'd said it desperately, and eventually I'd stopped saying it because words didn't change anything. The man I married was gone, if he'd ever really been there at all. And I was tired of waiting for him to come back. If you've spent years waiting for things to get better, adjusting yourself smaller and smaller to fit someone else's life, you're not wrong for finally getting tired of enduring. The comments often hold stories of others who normalize their own abandonment too. Sometimes sharing that recognition helps. If this resonates, this space continues weekly for those who choose to stay.